Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English. I am really happy to share with you a great article today about the life of Martin Luther King Jr. Will you open your packets, please, to page 1? At the top of page 1, you can see I have written highlight any interesting or important information. This will be a part of the grade for this packet because it will help me identify whether or not you can pick out main ideas from informational or nonfiction text. Let's go ahead and get those highlighters ready to go. Please follow along with me. Martin Luther King Jr. was a scholar, Baptist minister, and one of the most influential civil rights leaders of all time. He played a major role in ending segregation in America, creating the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and helping African Americans to secure the right to vote. He discouraged violence and instead promoted change through peaceful means such as protests, marches, and boycotts. Brr, cold in here. Early life. On January 25th, 1929, Michael Luther King Jr. was born to parents Michael King Sr. and Alberta Williams King in Atlanta, Georgia. As his father did before him, he changed his name to Martin later in life after the German religious leader Martin Luther. He was the middle child with an older sister, Willie Christine, and younger brother Alfred Daniel Williams King. Throughout his childhood, King's father fought against racial prejudice, which left a strong impression on him. In addition, both his father and grandfather were pastors in the Atlanta Ebenezer Baptist Church. King followed in their footsteps, becoming co-pastor with his father from 1960 until his father's passing. Education. King attended segregated public schools and was a strong student, skipping 9th and 11th grades and graduating from Booker T. Washington High School. At the age of 15, he graduated. From there, he enrolled at Morehouse College, a distinguished college for African Americans in Atlanta. Again, he followed in the footsteps of his father and grandfather, as both were graduates of this university. After graduating with his bachelor's degree in 1948, he majored in theology, the study of God and religious beliefs, at Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. He graduated in 1951 as president of his mostly white senior class and was awarded a fellowship to continue his studies at Boston University. In 1955, King earned his doctorate degree at the young age of 25. Wow, you guys, a doctor at 25. Pretty wonderful. Please flip the page. What pops right off the page to me is a photo. This is the last picture of the entire King family taken before his death. Head into the text for family life. It was at Boston University that King met his wife, Coretta Scott, who was an aspiring singer and musician at the New England Conservatory. The two were married on June 18, 1953, in a ceremony performed by his father at the home of Coretta's parents in Marion, Alabama. They later had 2 sons and 2 daughters, Yolanda, Martin Luther King III, Dexter Scott, and Bernice Albertine. The family settled in Montgomery, Alabama, which would later become the site of one of the most famous marches on the civil rights movement. Career. In 1954, King became pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery. He was a strong advocate for civil rights for members of his race and a leading member of the National Association for the Advancement of Color People, the NAACP. This was the most important organization of its kind in America at the time. In 1955, he accepted a position to help lead the first nonviolent demonstration of the civil rights movement, the Montgomery bus boycott. At the time, Black Americans were forced to sit in the back of buses and give up their seats to white passengers when seats weren't available in the white sections. In an effort to change this policy, African Americans joined together and refused to ride the buses until it was changed. Their hope was that by boycotting the buses, the loss of money would be a peaceful way to accomplish their goal. On March 2, 1955, Rosa Parks sat in the first row of the colored person section, tired after a long day of work. When the white section filled and a white passenger needed a seat, the bus driver demanded that she stand and give him hers. She refused and was arrested and was found guilty at her trial a week later. The night she was arrested, King met with the leaders of the NAACP and planned the boycott. In his first speech, he said, quote, "We have no alternative but to protest. For many years, we have shown an amazing patience. We have sometimes given our white brothers the feeling that we liked the way we were being treated. But we come here tonight to be saved from that patience that makes us patient with anything less than freedom and justice." The Montgomery bus boycott lasted 382 days. During the boycotts, King was arrested, his home was bombed, and he was personally abused. On December 21st, 1956, the Supreme Court of the United States declared the laws requiring segregation of buses unconstitutional, meaning that it was against the Constitution. And King became one of the major leaders of the civil rights movement in America. Next page, please. In 1957, he was elected the president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a group dedicated to further the civil rights movement in nonviolent ways. Their ideas were based on the principles of Christianity and the peaceful methods of Gandhi. From 1957 to 1968, he traveled more than 6 million miles, spoke publicly over 2,500 times, wrote 5 books, and led a massive protest in Birmingham, Alabama. That's when he wrote his famous letter from Birmingham jail after being arrested for protesting. King believed that the best way to give African Americans a say in how our country was run was to allow them to vote, something they'd never been able to do before. He planned events in Alabama to register blacks as voters and peaceful marches on Washington, D.C. to share his ideas. In front of 250,000 people in Washington, he gave his most famous speech, "I Have a Dream." Finally, in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed, which made it illegal to discriminate based on race in publicly owned facilities. For his effort to make this change happen, King was the youngest person to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize at the age of 35. This honor came with a prize of $54,123, which he donated to further the cause of the civil rights movement. He donated it, you guys. Pretty amazing. On March 7, 1965, the first march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama turned violent when police used nightsticks and tear gas on the protesters. King wasn't in this march, but it was on television and Americans were shocked by the violence, calling it Bloody Sunday. 2 days later, a second march took place on the same route, but this time King participated. When they were faced with police barriers, they kneeled in prayer instead of forcing a confrontation and then turned back. For the next march on March 21st, President Lyndon B. Johnson pledged the support of U.S. Army troops and the Alabama National Guard. On March 25th, the protesters grew from 2,000 in number to an amazing 25,000 people. 5 months later, Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, giving African Americans the right to vote. And next to that text, I see a picture. And that caption says, "Lyndon B. Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act with Martin Luther King Jr. joining him." Starting off the next section, unfortunately, it's titled Death. On April 3rd, 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. gave his final speech. "I've been to the mountaintop at the Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee." He said, "I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." Let's go ahead and flip that page. The following day, standing on the balcony outside his hotel room, King was killed by a sniper's bullet. The shooter, James Earl Ray, was a criminal and a drifter. He was caught 2 months later, pleaded guilty, and was sentenced to 99 years in prison, where he died on April 23, 1998. After his death, many people After his death, many people continued his work to honor his legacy. In 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed into law a bill creating Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which was first celebrated in 1986. By the year 2000, it was celebrated in all 50 states. In addition to this national holiday, schools and public buildings have been named after him, and a memorial on Independence Mall in Washington, D.C. was created in his honor. And I see a statue there. It says, "Located in downtown Washington, D.C., the memorial honors Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy and the struggle for freedom, equality, and justice." I see some of my handwriting at the bottom that says a central idea of the article is. Why don't we go ahead and cap our highlighters at this time? You guys did a great job following along. And I'd like you guys to come back together with me as a whole group. Please go ahead and grab those pens and pencils. You guys are going to need them. Thanks, everyone.